Hey guys, it's your host Aku here. So I wanted to take a tiny break of my usual video scheduling and wanted to make something different. So yeah, this time it's going to be a collection video. But it's not just your ordinary collection video. I wanted to also talk a little bit of like my personal history and why not. And there's technically a reason why for it, and it kind of sort of intertwines as it was kind of part of the start of my YouTube journey. So basically my YouTube journey and with the whole 3DS era, this all pretty much happened around the same time. So actually my reasoning of why I wanted to make the video in the first place, technically there's two reasons. One, this was going to be one of the videos that I was planning to make in preparation to celebrate my 10-year anniversary, along with a video specifically more about my YouTube reflection, talking about the history of my YouTube journey in itself. However, a lot of stuff happened, and unfortunately I couldn't really get this out on time, so I'm doing this now. Okay, so I guess by means of how I could start with this, I guess how I was able to eventually get it in the first place, because spoiler, I didn't necessarily get this on launch, and there's a pretty big reason, and that would have to have me go a little bit of the history of the 3DS in itself. So yeah, you see, when I saw the announcement of Nintendo pretty much plans to release a brand new handheld console at the time, which was the 3DS, you bet your ass I wanted to buy it, especially when they announced Star Fox 64 3D. You had no idea how I wanted to finally get a Star Fox game for the first time. Okay, at the start of the 3DS's life cycle, I can say it was pretty rough. You see, when the 3DS came around, it was initially priced at $250, and yes, so many people had thought that this was expensive, which it was. Eventually, Nintendo decided to drop the price after that backlash from consumers into $170. However, for those that did manage to get it before the price drop, were given the privilege to actually download 10 NES games and 10 GBA games for free. Now, the reason as to why Nintendo didn't even transfer that sort of thing onto people that definitely got it later on is still a bit of a head scratcher. Though then again, eventually those games were then shifted to be available for the Virtual Console on the Wii U, so I guess I'm not all too mad about it, but still a goddamn head scratcher. But in all seriousness though, I didn't get mine right away, and even with countless begging and convincing my mother to get one for me, that eventually worked by the time Christmas came around, so yeah, I managed to finally get one as a Christmas present, along with few games. Don't worry, you'll know what those are a little later. Actually, out of all the eras of gaming that I've ever experienced, the 3DS in particular, well, has been one of the most influential, but also very experimental. So what do I mean by that? Well, I was basically experimenting with getting into different sorts of genres. You could say I was expanding my horizons a bit. Aside from getting into genres that I was familiar with, such as like platformers and monster taming genres, I can pretty much say, I was expanding into other sorts of different genres that I guess I was dabbling into a little more than I was prior. And because of that experimentation, that even eventually expanded upon me going back to older systems and playing some of the games that I might have missed out first time around. And you could pretty much say that this even expands upon more on a Nintendo Switch, but we'll talk about that some other time. Anyways, before we talk about games, let's talk about systems. I don't own a lot of them. I only have 3 in total, and I think that's fine by me. So let me show them all. I'm happy to say that I still own my original 3DS. This one comes in what they call Flame Red. And for the longest time I thought this one was available at launch, but it turns out that the only ones that were available on launch were the Aqua Blue and the Cosmic Black. I know eventually there was also like the purple one, which I think it's a lot more rare, and then this pink one, though I never had interest for that one. This baby still works to this very day. I think I only used it for a little less than a year. Why? Because eventually I did ended up picking up this 3DS XL. This one is in matte finished red. Unfortunately, this particular 3DS XL might have a really tight ass hinge to a point where for some reason it just randomly popped off the outer part. The rest of the other components is still left intact. I don't know what the hell happened. I never even dropped this son of a bitch. Which sucks because the reason why I wanted it so bad was because I just wanted to have a much bigger screen. This was considered my main 3DS for a very long time, up until 2017, where eventually I felt like I needed to buy a new one, so I didn't have to deal with this whole broken hinge situation. Actually, the reason why I bought this Nerf case in the first place was definitely because when I researched of how people manage to fix issues with 3DSs with broken hinges, a lot of people are very prone to pretty much purchase a case like this one as a means of a temporary fix and a means of extra support. Though I'm not entirely sure how true this is, but I still bought it anyways, and I think I got this one for around $15. It was really weird, but this is how I basically played my system for quite a bit. Although, when the summer of 2017 came around, that's when I bought my Nintendo 2DS XL. And for what I remember, it was pretty much sold at a very good price. I just wish I can remember. I'm going to assume $170 off the bat. It was such an amazing deal. So you can safely say that this is technically my main 3DS now, up until the rest of time. Now let's finally get into the games, but first with the box copies that I still have. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. So I managed to get this one for $20. This is the Nintendo Selects version. This is because for a very long time, this was considered pretty rare. Either that, or it was just outright fucking expensive. Next up, we have Miitopia, which is another game that I did a Let's Play on the channel. And to this very day, it is the longest Let's Play I ever did. At least the 3DS version. I'm still currently working on the Switch version, and up to this recording, I've already done the main story. Here's an interesting title, Curse Party. I actually got this one on Christmas, and yes, I managed to get it for the Back to School edition, which is the name of the special edition. It came with 2 dolls, or 2 figurines, and a soundtrack, which was really sweet. I've been wanting to try the game for a very, very long time, and ever since getting this, now I can. Of course, I think this was also released for the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch version, so anyone that wants to have the opportunity to play those games, now's your chance. Okay, so the remaining case games that I've gotten are WarioWare Gold, Andrea Mystery Dungeon, because I'm not into the main series in itself, and finally Luigi's Mansion, though if I'm gonna be honest with this version, I kind of prefer the original GameCube over it. It's not necessarily bad, but I have troubles with the controls, but despite that, I did manage to get rank B. I do have 2 more special edition boxes for some of the games. Sandman Kagura Deep Crimson I managed to get along with Curse Party, and this one includes the game and soundtrack. It's this very simple side-scroller hack and slash, and I've been playing it quite a bit, and I really enjoy it. Last and least is this Chibi Robo Ziplash. Since no one didn't necessarily like the game, and my only reason why I even decided to get it in the first place was just to get this amiibo, because at the time when I purchased it, there was no other way of getting it. Since I have shown you all the games that I have in boxes, now let me show you the rest of it, which are completely loose copies. I literally tried to separate them into categories, but it's not perfect. But I'll show you everything that I got here. So let's try first with the Pokemon. So I have Pokemon Y, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, which both of them I did Let's Plays on the channel, but this was a long time ago when I used a camcorder. Next up we have Pokemon Sun, which I'm surprised that I really did enjoy this one, genuinely. Okay, here's a spinoff, Pokemon Robo Blast. This was a game that I once did a Let's Play on at one point, but this was cancelled due to loss of interest. Well, here's a monster taming genre that isn't Pokemon. Yokai Watch 2 Bony Spirits. I wasn't necessarily there for the hype, though I think by the time I did purchase, I think the series was already going downhill. Okay, next up are the fighting games, and I only have 4 of them. Super Street Fighter 4, which I have along with a copy of Dead or Alive Dimensions. So actually I did play quite a bit for the former, and I really did enjoy it a lot. They both are really good. And Dead or Alive was something that I did a Let's Play on, and to this very day I feel like this is one of the best looking 3DS games to this very day. Well, one of the best early 3DS games, I should say. Next up is Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. I remember playing so much of Smash Run because it reminded me so much of Kirby Air Ride's City Trial. Last but not least is Blaze Blue Continuum Shift 2, which I think it's a 2D fighter game if I'm not mistaken. One of the interesting things I do remember about this game is that this one does not let you do sleep mode, so I hope to God you're not using sleep mode or try to close the 3DS, otherwise you're just wasting battery when playing this game. Since I have been playing platformer games for a very long time and has been something I'm very familiar with, there's plenty of them here. First up here is Super Mario 3D Land. This was one of the first 3DS games that I ever owned for Christmas, along with a few others. Next up is Super Mario Bros. 2. Though I heard a lot of people make criticism that this was just the same game as the first game. Next up here is Adventure Time. If I'm not mistaken, the subtitle is Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage? This plays akin to The Adventures of Link on the NES if you're familiar with that game. Next up I have a physical copy of Shovel Knight. And believe it or not, I actually downloaded the update very recently because I didn't find this out till later on, where I get to pretty much play the other 3 campaigns. It was really cool. I'm actually playing one of those campaigns right now, and I'm actually pretty much enjoying it. Next up is Azure Striker Gunvolt Striker Pack. This plays very similar to Mega Man X if you're familiar with it. I think they later released it on the Nintendo Switch. Next up is Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. I believe I got this for a clearance sale at GameStop one time. I don't remember if this was apparently $10 or $20. Next up we have Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. A really fun remake if I do say so myself, but I don't think I've ever finished it yet. Here's another game that I did a Let's Play on, Kirby's Triple Deluxe, though unlike a few other Let's Plays, I think this one was completely non-commentary. And last but not least, Mega Man Legacy Collection, which I barely touched. Okay, next pile here are the RPGs, so let's get to them. Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance was one of the games that I got for my birthday back in 2012, I believe. I really enjoyed it, and I pretty much finished the game. Oh, here's a rare game, Tales of the Abyss. I think I've managed to find this around $20. It was a really great steal. Next up is Bravely Default, which I really enjoyed a lot, but the end game though, it's really bad. And I still have not gotten Bravely Second though, I wish I did. Okay, this is a really weird game, Conception 2. So basically you choose one of the girls you chat with, you take them to church, and you mate with them to create children that fight alongside with you when you go to dungeons. It's a really weird game, but I really enjoyed it a lot. Along with this copy of Cave Story 3D. Actually, these two are practically very uncommon, but some reason I managed to get these two for a very good price. Especially Cave Story 3D, which I got for around $25. Well, here's a tactical RPG, Project Cross Zone. I managed to pretty much finish the game, and it took me a fucking long ass time to do so. Oh god. Along with Project Cross Zone 2, which I think made a much better improvement, to be honest, though I still did not finish it. I'm halfway through it. Puzzles & Dragons Z plus Puzzles & Dragons Super Mario Edition. I believe in Japan these two games were sold separately, but I think because when they were developing Super Mario Edition, I think they decided to pretty much localize Puzzles & Dragons Z. So they decided to pretty much put them together when this was localized in America and I think Europe as well. Next up here is Rune Factory 4. I spent a ton of fucking hours. I managed to finish off the first and second arc for it, and I finally managed to get married and had a child. It was so satisfying. Yes, I'm aware that there's a Switch version, but not yet, please. Here's an odd game I managed to get. Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. This is one of those new Nintendo 3DS exclusives because otherwise it would not work on the old 3DSs. Here's a pretty rare game and a game that no one barely talks about. LBX, Little Battlers Experience. If you ever heard of it, it kind of plays similar to another franchise that I've known, Custom Robo, which is actually why I purchased it in the first place. I played a little bit of it, but there's a point where I'm actually really stuck on, and I haven't really got out of it yet. Okay, so the last two I've got here are RPG Maker Fest, which I still don't know how to really play, and I really need to look at a tutorial of how to even create my own game. Last but not least is the return to Popolo Croix, which is supposed to be some form of a crossover game between the Popolo Croix series and Story of Season, which is the original Harvest Moon franchise. I have a very small collection for rhythm games. First up here is Rhythm Thief and the Emperor's Treasure. I actually bought this because a friend of mine have once did a let's play at one point and it got my interest, so I bought it. I managed to get it before it got rare, so yeah. This plays very similar to Professor Layton, but with rhythm aspects of it. And finally, Hatsume Miku Project Mirai Deluxe. This is the deluxe version of the second Mirai game that never left Japan, and I really enjoyed this game a lot. This was my introduction to the Hatsune Miku project series. The last two piles are kind of like miscellaneous if I were to be very honest with you. First here is Tomodachi Life, which believe it or not is a sequel to Tomodachi Collection on the DS, which never left Japan. Next up is Nintendogs plus Cats. And finally, Ultimate NES Remix, which I think I only recall playing about maybe 2 times and I don't think I ever touched it again since. Okay, here are the last piles here. First off here is Star Fox 64 3D along with Super Monkey Ball 3D, which these were the other 2 games that I've gotten first for Christmas. Next up I have Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. I'm not too crazy about it as much as the first game. It's not bad, but I think because I'm so stuck with a particular stage and because there's no save points, it makes it really hard to continue. Here we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, which I really enjoyed a lot. Next up here is Kid Icarus Uprising, which is a really fun game and I really recommend it for everyone to try out. So the last 2 here are The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D and Angry Birds, which I think I got as a Christmas gift from my cousin. And now it gives me a good excuse to not download the mobile games. I could literally just play them here. Okay, so this is pretty much it for physical games. Now, I still have plenty of games that I can show you digitally. Okay, so since I have quite a few of the digital games, I'm gonna go by them really quickly. Gurumin 3D, A Monstrous Adventure, Debamin, Debamin 2, Debamin 3, which these games were made by Genius Sonority, the same creators that made Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness. Rhythm Heaven Megamix, Yumi's Odd Odyssey, the Japanese name is actually called Sayonara Umihama Kurase. Pushmo, this is the only one I have in the series. Liberation Maiden, Mighty Gunvolt, Chibi Robo Photo Finder, Yokai Watch 3, Yokai Watch Blasters, Red Corp version of course, Kirby Planet Robobot, Blast and Master Zero, Pokemon Rumble World, Ever Oasis, Fire Emblem Awakening, Still Aglow, Attack of the Friday Monsters, A Tokyo Tale, Lord of Magma, Made in Heaven, The Legend of Dark Witch Episode 2, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity. Not as good as the other Mystery Dungeon games, and I still haven't tried Super Mystery Dungeon yet. And that's everything 3DS related that I can show you guys. From what I can remember from the 3DS era, you can say that video games being part of mainstream have again, it's more so a gradual process of even reaching that kind of status in the first place. And a lot of things were pretty much opened up for me. As time went on, and thanks to the 3DS, as I once said before, it pretty much took me out of my comfort zone and to try out all sorts of different games when it comes to different franchises or even different genres. And while I don't necessarily think I've tried every single genres yet, or I've tried every single franchises, I feel like to me that's almost virtually impossible by that point. But in many ways, video games have become so popular now, and I'm so glad that pretty much more and more people as time went on had gotten into gaming, and that's something I'll always be happy about. Also, one other thing is that I think when it came to YouTube, the gaming content didn't necessarily become super popular until around 2013. This was also during the 3DS's era, and I think on that same year, I think that's when the 3DS became one of the best sellings, you can say, which I think I recall before, and I will say it again, the 3DS did have a very rough start, so to see it eventually redeem itself by having more games being available or more games being available on that platform, it's really interesting. Well, glad I can make this video. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and I'll see you guys around. Ciao!